Have your attention, please. We'll be starting shortly. Good evening and welcome to the Planning Board for Thursday, September 8th, 2022. The first matter on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from August 15th, 2022. Board members have any questions or comments on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the August 15th meeting as presented. Sorry.
Motion made. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. Tonight, we have 4 public hearings. The first matter is a definitive subdivision approval for 90 Lupine Road. Cornerstone Land Associates has applied to the Lowell Planning Board for the approval of a definitive subdivision plan that includes the subdivision of the existing parcel into 2 parcels, one of which does not meet the minimum frontage requirements pursuant to Section 5.1 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. The property is located within the traditional neighborhood single-family zoning district. The project requires planning board approval under Lowell subdivision of land regulations. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Kenneth Laney of Cornerstone Land Associates, representing myself, actually, on this particular one. We're before you this evening to obtain a definitive subdivision approval to subdivide a single lot in the traditional single-family loan at 90.1, and 90.2 Lupine Road. We obtained the Zoning Board of Appeals approval for a frontage variance as well as minimum lot area. The particular lot itself will have 58.4 feet of frontage and 5,800 square feet, where 70 feet and 7,000 square feet is required under the zoning bylaw. The proposed dwelling will be a single-family dwelling, about 2,200 square feet in size. The dwelling itself will sit on the parcel, centrally located, and it does meet all of the zoning setback requirements, usable open space, as well as parking requirements. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to speak on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Laney, at this time? No, okay. So at this time, I'll open it up to the public. Anybody here like to speak in favor of this project? In favor? In favor? Hearing
Yeah.
none? Anybody like to speak in opposition?
In favor.
Yes, could you state your name and address for the record, please, sir?
My name is Nathaniel Thompson. I live 95 Lupine Road. And I'm in favor of this.
Yes, so you want to speak in favor or against? I'm sorry.
In favor.
In favor? Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Let's see. Before we go forward, I did receive a letter that was addressed to myself, to Thomas Linehan, Chairman, Planning Board, variance approval, and public hearing scheduled for September 8th. Dear Mr. Linehan, I write in opposition to any subdivision approval for the building project proposed on 90 Lupine Road, and I make it for the same reasons I outlined before in previous requests made for the same property last year with the zoning board. That is, 1, the lot area is too small for the size home being proposed for it, and with many other developed lots in Centerville. This parcel amounts to someone's backyard, not a full lot area, with the result that any house built there ends up having to be squeezed in sideways in order to fit. I thought I heard that the Centerville's zoning regulations had been modified some years ago to prevent such a crowding in the neighborhoods, as well as height limits. I hope I wasn't wrong about that. If so, I beg you to please stick with the zoning intentions to keep our neighborhood from becoming overcrowded. Number 2, too busy. It is directly across the street from a construction project that has been ongoing for the past 10 years with no sign of ending. Number 3, congestion. The owner of the lot in question already hosts a half-dozen cars that line the street every day. Not sure if these vehicles are owned by people who live in the owner's Drake home right next door to the lot in question, or are employees of his business. In addition, the house across the street also frequently have 2 or 3 cars on their side, making for a difficult passage for any cars traveling along the road. If further owners of the proposed house ever decide to host a Christmas party, their vehicles would clog the whole street. Number 4, there's no reason to construct a house so big that it needs to violate every single zoning variance on the property. If it has to be done, why not build a more modest home that fits existing variances? Number 5, the owner is likely already violating some ordinances, soil contamination, by running a virtual boatyard on the property, including storing a pair of large yachts there, outbuildings, trailers, tools, construction materials, and whatnot. I can only imagine what the remaining yard space around the new house will look like if the owner continues to collect junk as he has been doing. Number 6, abandonment. Then, of course, there's always the possibility that the owner will sell his current home on the other side of the town line that currently divides his property, build this new home, then sell it too, leaving an overcrowded neighborhood holding the bag. In recent past, Lowell Centerville has been the victim of rampant disregard of variances that has resulted in the construction of homes squeezed into backyards with buildings sometimes even showered in sideways and little or no off-street parking or yard space. What we've ended up with is the overcrowding of an already dense neighborhood and the creation of spot slums that have spread to next-door homes, chasing away middle-class buyers and future contributing to the decline of the neighborhoods. As an example, check homes along Lakeview Ave. What was once Lowell's best-kept secret among its many urban neighborhoods has now become one with the city's worst reputation, as I learned from the Lowell Sun some years ago. With the corresponding uptick in shootings, drugs, dealings, etc., a far cry from what it was when I was a youngster, I thought that the out-of-date zoning regulations that allow for this kind of backyard construction project have been corrected. If so, I urge you to adhere to them when you consider proposals such as that for this project. Because even if the owner builds their home within all zoning regs, the lot will still be too small, in my opinion. Lowell zoning officials must start thinking about what would be best for these neighborhoods, to improve them, preferably with more open space, more trees, and less crowding. Finally, I hope the city is not more interested in how much more tax money it can collect on a new home instead of an empty backyard. That would be very short-sighted so far as I'm concerned. My final plea would be to reject the latest plans and help neighbors preserve the quality of life in this neighborhood. For the moment, at least, still one of the city's best-kept secrets. Finally, I urge the board members to come down for a site visit of the property in question first before making any decisions on approval of the subdivision plan. Signed, a neighbor who received an abutters notice for the subdivision approval in the mail. P.S. Please excuse my not including my name with this letter. The last time I attended a public hearing on another issue, the applicant showed up at my door and ranted and screamed at me using foul language and F-bombs that disturbed me greatly. After that experience, I have no desire to be verbally assaulted again. I hope my desire to remain anonymous does not preclude you from giving due consideration to my concerns. I understand from speaking to my neighbor that he and others did appear at the public hearing with the ZBA on this issue, but the ZBA's approval of the variances have given up hope on preventing the project from happening. Thus, they may not appear at your hearing despite still being against the project. If I could meet with the chairman privately to hear my concerns or the issues raised in this letter, I'd be happy to do so. I'd be happy to do that. However, thank you. So it's not signed, no address, no phone number, so the chairman could not reach out.
Chairman Linehan, I do have two other letters, if you don't mind reading those into.
So for this letter, I couldn't reach out to the person because they didn't give name, address, or phone number. So are these letters in support?
Yes.
Okay. So we have two letters in support. Let's take a look. Here we go. Robert and Patty Cabtree, 70 Lupine Road. To whom it may concern, as residents of Lupine Road for the past 21 years, we have borne witness to many changes to the streets and neighborhoods, some good and some not, to the point that we spearhead the effort to rezone our street to prevent development that is out of character with the present residents. With that being said, the Laneys have been good neighbors to us for just as many years as it is with the utmost confidence in them that we urge you to approve their variance to build a single-family dwelling at 90 Lupine Road. Ken and Melissa would never build a project that would be in any way detrimental to our neighborhood. These are not developers with an agenda to flip a property. These are our neighbors trying to do something beneficial for themselves with an extra parcel of land attached to their property. We urge you to recognize and approve their variance as soon as possible. Signed, Bob and Patty Caffrey. The next one I have is Shajeda, is it S-Y-E-D? I'm not
Yep.
sure how you
Side.
pronounce that. 75 Blue Pen Road, City of Lowell. This is Shajeda Stein from 75 Blue Pen Road, Lowell, Mass. I wish my voice be heard today at the zoning board hearing in the support of Ken Laney's appeal of building a new house addition at 90 Lupine Road, excuse me. I wish to see a new addition of their house on this road. All my best and wishes to Ken Laney's appeal and wish to see it approved today's meeting. Best. Ken, I'll give you back to these.
Yes, sir.
You do me a favor, if you could give those to Peter, so we'll put them into the record. Thank you very much. So, we have, so we had one person speak in favor, 2 letters in favor, and 1 letter against. Did anybody else like to be heard? Yes, just come to the microphone, please, sir, and state your name and address.
Mr. Chairman and board members, my name is Hushmand Afshar, and I'm a small business owner here in the city. And the city is very important to me because it was my first port of entry getting off the boat several years ago. So I do care for the city, and very recently I became the owner of this property. All I can say is that as a result of this improvement and the development on this single lot, it's going to be day and night. What you see right there, right now, which has collected over the years, the items which was mentioned in that letter without name and without signature, will be removed. It will be converted into a residential single-family home, posh and clean. And those who know me in the city and familiar with my business, they know about how do I care for maintaining a property like that I own. So it's if we get to build that house on that property, it will be a very good-looking, marvelous addition to the neighborhood. I can assure you that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to be heard? Anybody else? Anybody else? Peter, anybody on Zoom? Any questions? Do we have anybody on Zoom that wants to be heard? No? Okay. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to the board members, see if they have any questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yeah, Mr. Fischett?
may. Peter, the letters that the chairman read into the record that the applicant just provided, what are they dated? Are they recent?
They're from May.
Okay, all right. Because one of them states in addition, so I'm
She's,
not quite sure what,
I think she might was meaning addition to the neighborhood.
So were those prepared for the ZBA meeting? those
They
letters?
did, well, they appeared and prepared for the ZBA, and I thought it would be best to include them in the record.
so I do have some issue with the application in the sense, if you look, and even what was uploaded, you look at the GIS map, and you drive down that street, and these subdivisions, just about every subdivision in the city of Lowell, from the late 1800s to the early turn of the last century, they're mostly all, you look at the maps, they're mostly all lots with 50 square feet and 90 feet deep. But the way they developed is that in many of the development patterns, and especially in the suburban single-family zones, it's no different. They own 3 of those lots. And so it has an appearance, it's really, it looks like a 7,500, 10,000 square foot lot. Not the Ponderosa. We're not trying to protect an acre lot here. We're just trying to protect, in this zone, 7,000 square feet. If you look at that GIS map, and I counted it, and if you look at the homes, there's 17 homes from the Dracut line to Orleans Street. 17 homes. 8 of the homes have almost double the frontage of what's being proposed here. 2 of the homes have larger frontage than what's here, and 4 of the lots, which are across the street from this lot, which would further congest that little intersection where you turn onto Lupin and DeRozier Street, are the small lots. So I don't agree with the assertion that it meets the general layout of that street. And then you're here for subdivision approval. And when I look at subdivision approval, if I can find it. Oh, here we go. So what we're considering under the subdivision approval, and it doesn't mince words, okay, this is the subdivision of land regulations amended January 30th, 2009. It's on the city's Lowell website. Lot size and frontage, this is in considering a subdivision. All lots shall be of such size and dimensions that have frontage to meet or exceed the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance of Lowell. Only one residential building may occupy each lot unless approval is given by the board. So I'm shocked that the neighborhood isn't all out here wondering what's going on. So I don't know. I will tell you, I'm one person on the board, but I have real concern with, and to the letter that's unsigned, that was the point when the zoning was revised, was to really take a look at some of this infill development. And unfortunately, in the name of let's see here. I often see, trying to meet the needs of, the middle housing crisis, and that doesn't mean that we completely ignore the zoning, and we've approved diminished frontages of lots, many of them that have come before us for a special permit, but when we look at it and we look at the general development pattern of that street, it has to follow it, and unless you can demonstrate to me to the contrary of what I can give you the GIS map that I just counted out, what I'm looking at,
I actually think that the Zoning Board of Appeals received a letter of comments from the Planning Department that did identify the actual number of units that had frontage and area.
They just said that it meets the
No,
general.
Not for you folks, but for the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Do you have that with you?
I'm going to look for it, sir.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely. But I mean, just my initial count, it shows that there are 8 properties that, you are correct, have larger frontage, and 8 properties that have,
Like I said, when you look at the subdivision, absolutely.
yep,
They're all 50-foot frontage and 90, and I can show you my neighborhood, same thing. I own 2.5 lots.
and again, I'd be glad to add more land, but at this point, because of the town line, there's no additional land to add, you know? So ultimately, we feel as though that layout is consistent with the
So you're
neighborhood.
creating your own hardship, and you're creating your own,
Well, I didn't create my own hardship. I mean, the town line created my hardship, and the zoning board of appeals agreed, ultimately. But yeah, if you give me a sec, I'll look for that.
because some of the, it looks like, well, some of the other property crosses the town line. I can't figure out from the GIS versus the plot plan whether the garage is actually, it looks like.
It's halfway.
The existing garage goes over the lot line, is that
Correct.
correct? Yeah.
And under the approval from the zoning board of appeals, that garage will be removed.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess ultimately, if you think that layout isn't consistent with the neighborhood, I would have to disagree with that, because I think that at least half of the remaining lots on that road, and consistent within the rest of that neighborhood, are all less than 7,000 square feet. I don't know, Peter, is there any way you can pull up those comments from the zoning board of appeals?
I would prefer, if you want to, for my, I don't know what the rest of the board members feel, but, I mean, if you want to continue and you want to come back with specific lots and what they are, I don't want to comment from DPD. You're the applicant,
Well, I understand, I'm not saying that they broke it down in their comments.
did they?
Yeah, they did, absolutely.
I'm looking at the GIS, and I drove down the street.
And you feel as though that lot size and that lot frontage?
I mean, it's consistent with the two across the street from it, and diagonally across, and I mean, that's just gonna further add to congestion in that little spot right there.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you?
I think that would add to the density and congestion of that little intersection of DeRoches and Lupin.
Well, I think currently what we're adding for additional parking spaces eliminates any concern for parking on the street in that particular location. And if you look across the street, they do have 2 driveways that are just single-stall driveways that are long, narrow driveways, so they do park on the
Well, I
road.
know like the ZBA, you know, unfortunately, you're not here for that portion of it, but I saw one of your parking, it's not the design I like to see, small lot, and the driveway is right in front of the house. You got a parking space that you pull up right to the house, and then there's 2 alongside.
Yep,
So I'm not,
4 total spaces. And 2 is only required.
but that's not what we're here to approve, so.
I agree. I understand that, sir.
So that would be my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
See
you,
what
Mr. Fiat.
See what the other board members feel.
Caleb Bissonade, anybody have any comments over here?
If you don't mind, I go first. So, I'm undecided regarding with the, the frontage, and I will be curious to see the document that the applicant mentioned, that was supplied to the ZBA, and, the numbers, I guess, are the numbers, so I think, I'll prefer looking at the number first, before I have a conclusion. And secondly, I think, maybe I check with, Member Frechette. Is the definitive, the definition, I remember we kind of asked for a rendering usually because of the reduced frontage, is that usually we want to, as a board, want to look at how the house looks, and I don't think there is a rendering provided in the application.
Unfortunately, the awkward part of this is they're not here this is what's confusing, and Peter, they're not here before us for the special permit of 5.1, right? There for subdivision approval. And that's what becomes a little skewed. And although in the regulations, it says they come to the planning board for that. But it looks like they obtain that with the variance. I actually am confused with to your point, Callum, I am,
I see. Then I'm confused about that. But, and then I also understand that the variance of conditions, and I'm not quite sure. I look at the decision, but I'm not sure what those conditions are. I don't know if-
It was just one condition. They had me add dimensions to the parking spaces on the plan, redate it, and resubmit it for 10/18/2022.
Okay, which is on the plan.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. So I think if that's the case, at least I want to look at the table that was mentioned before we go any further, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Sinead, any questions or comments this time?
Looking at the GIS maps, I'm generally in support of the applicant. I think it is consistent with the neighborhood. I agree it would be nice to see the same exhibits just to get that confirmation. Just not doing the count while we're sitting here at the meeting, but I'm generally supportive of this application. And just as a comment to the staff, I feel like this is maybe the second time in the last few meetings that it's happened where the ZBA have some material that isn't shared with us, and even if it's just informational material, it would be nice to have that information either emailed to us or posted with the application. Thank you, that's all.
Okay. Mr. Malovich, I know we have you on Zoom. Bob, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I kind of have the same feeling. I would like to see a really definition of if this is consistent. I don't know why I'm blocking myself. My view of the site, I thought it was not kind of crowded between those two buildings. And there's so many activities on that corner lot that this piece is being taken from. The separating lines seem to be designed only because the swimming pool would be compromised. You know, they're giving up the old garage, but I think the real driving force on this separating subdivision line is the issue of the swimming pool complex. And I think they should have done it without that consideration and maybe split the lot in half. It would fit much better into the neighborhood, in my opinion. But I go with the will of the board on this.
I think that he said, let me paraphrase if I'm incorrect, that he thought it would be better if you could actually just split the lot in half to provide a little bit more area to this particular lot in question. But ultimately, we're unable to do that because of the town line. City of Lowell doesn't count any land in Dracut. Town of Dracut doesn't count any land in Lowell. So ultimately, I'm stuck and governed by that particular town line. I don't have a problem, Mr. Frechette, providing you with the GIS breakdown document. I apologize, I don't have it in my folder tonight, and my email doesn't seem to be cooperating
I
either.
mean, if you can see, I mean, if you see what I'm looking at, right?
I mean, I provided a GIS page in the actual submission,
Yeah.
so I know exactly
Yeah.
what you're talking about. And like I said, it was broken down wonderfully for me by DPD at the time of moving forward with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah.
So if a continuance is something that you need to help you feel more comfortable, so I can provide that information ahead of time, you folks can review it, and then we can come and meet again. If there's some additional items that you'd like to see on the plan, Mr. Frechette, I could address those for you as well.
I would prefer that, but obviously, again, it's the will of the board. Thank you.
I guess I worked on this project for both. I don't think I necessarily broke it down by the exact numbers of how many lots were of the same size. I do provide like a dimensional table for the ZBA, but that's for that specific lot. However, on both comment memos, I did note that on the zoning board comment memo, I said there are several other lots in the neighborhood of similar size that do not meet the minimum requirements for minimum lot size and minimum lot area per dwelling unit. And then for tonight, I did make note of the frontage being relatively consistent with other lots, but Member Frechette made the point that some of those are corner lots, and I did not factor that in when I was making that memo.
And two of those are corner lots, actually. Two of those four. And if that's, and I don't disagree with your assertion that some of the lots, I mean, but when you really lay it out,
But I think the 4 corner lots are significantly less than 7,000 square feet. So albeit they might have frontage, they're probably not even 5,000 square.
but I guess the point, I don't want to get too hung up on that, the point is, I don't think that represents the development pattern of the street. And the subdivision approval says the lots, frontage shall meet the dimensional requirements. The lot,
I think
the
actually,
lot size and dimensions and have frontage that meet and exceed the minimum requirement of zoning ordinance of Lowell. So you're not here, from my understanding, you're not here for the special permit. That went through the ZBA with the variances, you're here for subdivision approval.
correct.
That's what I'm looking at.
And the subdivision refers to 5-1, which is the frontage, which was actually on,
It actually doesn't mince words, it doesn't refer to 5-1,
No,
it
it refers to-
specifically says it. right there.
yeah, but I'm saying on the, what was it?
Oh, on the,
Comments.
yeah, on the submittal and on DPD's description of the application, right?
Yep.
Cornerstone Land Associates has applied for the Lowell Planning Board for approval of a definitive subdivision plan that includes the subdivision of the existing parcel into 2 parcels, one of which does not meet the minimum frontage requirements pursuant to Section 5.1 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. The property is located within the traditional neighborhood single-family TSF zoning district. This project requires planning board approval under Lowell's subdivision land regulation, but under 5.1, that is the special permit, where we want to see the actual, how the house is going to sit on the lot, where we are approving it. And that was the whole point of the reduced frontage and coming before the boards, so we can kind of control how it's going to sit on the lot, how it's going to look. That was the whole point of it. And it even calls for comments from the city's planning department for design review.
Absolutely, which we did with the zoning board of appeals.
Understand, that's what makes it confusing.
And I don't
because-
mind providing the planning board with the renderings. We had renderings of the building. We have floor plans for the structure. I have a landscape plan that we provided.
What becomes unique is if you read our zoning ordinance, under 5.1, it doesn't say it'll go to the zoning board of appeals. It says it'll go to the planning board. So, but yet you went there for this variance, and it looks like it went there to take care of 5.1. So
So you're suggesting that I request a special permit for reduced frontage?
well, again, I think we need to get clarification.
So it went to the zoning board for frontage because it was 20 feet that it needed, and if I might be wrong, but I think the planning board can only do up to 15 feet.
No, it's 58.4 total, so we're less than 15
It's
feet.
less than 15 feet.
It would be,
I did the calculation here. 70 feet minus the 15 was 55, and you're at 58.
58.4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the previous variant dimensional table.
And again, I mean, we moved forward in this pattern after speaking with DPD, trying to coordinate how this was supposed to be applied for. Ultimately, again, I don't have a problem.
I'm dealing with what's put on my lap at this
Yep,
point.
I understand. I mean, I don't think there's anything saying that we couldn't reapply or add an application for a special permit for that reduced.
You'd have to
frontage.
repost.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, is that something you'd be comfortable with?
Not if you can't prove the development pattern to me. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
I think what would be helpful would be if we did, if, it does refer to the 5.1, but if we saw what the building was going to look at, the design, the architectural, and all of that, which is
Absolutely.
basically what we have to consider under the 5.1.
I have
And if you have all of that,
I have a color rendering as well with
yeah, because
landscaping.
that, when you do the special permit reduction of frontage under 5.1,
Yep.
those are all the criteria we have to consider. I know you have a couple of neighbors who are in support, and I think some of them are pretty close to your property, right?
Absolutely.
Number, was one of them number 70, which would be,
75, which was Rob and Patty Crabtree.
so where are they located from this lot?
They're 2 houses down,
Heading towards Lowell?
heading
Because
towards Lowell.
Bacon
Yeah,
stops, right?
heading
Okay.
towards
So
Lowell.
it's not the one to the left, it's,
Nat is directly across the street from me. His lot splits Drake and Lowell as well.
Okay.
My lot splits Drake and Lowell. The gentleman in that letter referred to a house that's been under construction for 10 years across the street. Dave and Nicole, they're friends of ours. They're not in opposition. He's been building that house on his own with his own 2 hands for quite some time. So I got to say, he's doing well by himself. I know it's taken some time. Other than that, Roger, our next-door neighbor, his concern, and he was at the Zoning Board of Appeals, Peter could speak to this as well, his concern was parking. So in front of David's house and where that bush line is, I guess, if 2 cars are parked there, it's difficult to get through. Now, as I've lived there for 21 years, I don't mind it, because when we had kids growing up who are all 23 and sadly still living at the house, but ultimately they're there, we used to have cars fly through that neighborhood. It's a cut-through. They come from Orleans and make their way to Lakeview Avenue, and they fly. So I used to stand out there with the hose and hose them down to keep them from driving through the neighborhood. You put out the signs. And David's got 4 small kids. So for me, as much as people complain about having to go slow there, it's beneficial for the neighborhood. And ultimately, with this development and the addition of the driveway and the garage space, we're going to be taking our side of the cars off. I have 4 people living in my house, 2 sons, a wife, and myself, and all 4 of us have cars. It's kind of the new thing. I know, the city only requires 2 spaces, but if you have 4 people living in a house now, it's 4
understand.
cars. So I tried to plan ahead so that there was that availability for an actual full family to live in that new location. But again, I can provide the rendering, the table breakdown, as well as the landscape plan. We're replacing all fencing, providing vinyl, just like the remainder of the back neighborhood, and Rob and Patty's house as well. It's a nice house.
Yeah. I think that would be helpful, because I think it, as indicated, the subdivision regs say refers to 5.1, and if we could see what you have available to us.
Absolutely.
Would show us what the criteria would be under 5.1.
Not a problem. I have no problem with that, Chairman Lenahan. Thank you.
I think the confusion over the frontage is, I'm just noticing this now because in my head it was already approved by the zoning board. These are 2 different sets of plans. The one that's submitted to the planning board and the one that we have from the zoning board. Because this.
plan is what should, so that was really just put in the packet for review.
Okay.
Does it say 1018?
It says July 26th, 2019. And on that, the frontage was 50. So that is what the zoning board approved.
Peter, I have to respectfully disagree.
Okay.
If you read the decision, it specifically says in the decision 58.4,
Yeah.
with the date of that plan on 10/18, which was provided and it was recorded.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and if it's not, I don't think the applicant does the applicant have the choice if it wasn't, if they weren't looking for relief beyond the 15 feet? They don't have the option to go to the ZBA, do they? Should he really be coming here for the 15-foot reduction, or it's actually a, 12-foot reduction?
So interestingly enough, we typically wouldn't have to, I've been doing this for 25 years, and this is the first time I brought an A&R plan with a reduced frontage and lot area to the planning board. For the longest time, you folks were just having those reviewed by engineering and DPW.
Well, this is not an A&R plan.
Well, I understand
It doesn't
that.
meet the frontage.
Approval not required would be full square footage,
I
full
understand.
frontage.
I'm just
That's an
saying.
A&R plan.
It
And that's administrative sign-off.
Yeah.
Just about every town in this,
I agree with
Commonwealth,
you.
so.
But ultimately, it's 58.4. I don't mind continuing. Mr. Linehan, if there is any comments, I haven't heard from you yourself. I want to make sure I address your concerns as well.
The ones that I raised would be if we could see the drawings.
Okay.
And with the other criteria that fall under the 5.1, that would make, me a little happier to see,
Not a problem. Like I said, and I have a
and
nice,
if you have all that, that shouldn't be a problem.
I do. I can get it over to Peter next week.
So if you're willing to do that, come back before the board.
Absolutely.
I know our next meeting is September 19th, which I think we're pretty full, but then we have, because we're Thursday night tonight because of Monday holiday, but I think after that will be October 3rd. Would October 3rd work?
October 3rd's fine.
The board members have any comments on the continuance for October 3rd? Any discussion or objection?
I'll just comment that the site plan that we have is a different date than the ZBA plan, so just having the correct site plan as well.
I'll correct that.
Yeah, thank you.
And as for me, I think since you have rendering and other things, like I think to me, either process in terms of procedure, whether you go for a special permit or 5.1 or what you're doing now, is not as important as long as I'm able to analyze your design and also the site plan in the same way.
Yeah, with the criteria of 5.1, you're comfortable with the variance
Yes.
approval? Yep, understandable.
So I'll make a motion that the matter be continued till October 3rd.
I second that, Mr. Chairman.
Right, Peter, isn't that the meeting after that? I don't think we have as much on that night, right? I know we have a lot on the next meeting, so. Yeah, so I think October 3rd would be fine then? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to continue to
Second.
October 3rd, and
Yep.
second by Mr. Fischett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposition? Hearing none. So that matter will be continued till October 3rd.
Excellent.
Luck,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
See you then. Thank you very much. Thank you for people coming down and speaking. We appreciate it. Okay, moving along on the agenda, we have a definitive subdivision approval for 32 Pine Hill Street. JMF Realty LLC has applied to the Lowell Planning Board for the approval of definitive subdivision plan that would allow the construction of a single-family home. The newly created lots will not meet the minimum frontage requirements pursuant to Section 5.1 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. The project requires definitive subdivision approval from the Lowell Planning Board under Lowell subdivision of Lowell regulations. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Attorney Brian Occasion from the law offices of Kevin J. Murphy with an office at 1 Courthouse Lane in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. I'm here representing JMF Realty, and with me is its principal, Michael Ferris. We're here seeking a definitive subdivision of the existing lot at 32 Pine Hill Street. Back in March, we received relief from the zoning board for the minimum lot area per dwelling unit, minimum frontage, minimum garage front yard setback requirements for both lots. The proposed house is definitely in keeping with the characteristic of the neighborhood. If you look at the GIS map that was submitted with the application, you'll note that the frontage for 34, which abuts the property, and 38, which is the next house down, is just 30 feet. In the lot areas for those properties are 2494 for one of them and 2477 for the other. The lot that we're looking to subdivide at 32 Pine Hill is 6,700 total square feet, and it would be proposed that it be divided at 3360 for one of them, 3345 for the other, and both would have 40 feet of frontage. There were comments from the planning department, and it did note that, it said the board should note that many properties in the area have similar frontage, and if you drive down that street, you'll notice that that is very similar to what we are proposing here. The property is in a traditional multifamily zoning district. The one proposed condition that the planning department recommended was that any killed or removed trees be replaced. Of course, my client is amenable to that if this subdivision was approved. There's also, there was a note about a tree in the front. And that tree is still there and is not planning to be removed, and we discussed that at length at the zoning board hearing. So we would ask that the definitive subdivision application be allowed, as the lots are consistent with those that are in the neighborhood. And I will say, the process that we took was to go to the zoning board to get relief and then come here, and that was the process that, he's no longer here, but Eric Slagle, as Director of Planning Development, advised Attorney Murphy and myself to proceed with.
Thank you, counsel. Does anybody else want to speak on behalf of the applicant?
We're all set.
No? Okay. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to the public. Did anybody anybody here this evening like to speak in favor of this project? Anybody in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none. Anybody in opposition? In opposition? In opposition?
Hello,
Oh, just
this
come
is
to the
Victoria
microphone.
on Zoom.
And please, and state your name and address.
Hi, this is Victoria Richards on Zoom.
Okay, we'll take the
18
live
Pine
person
Hill.
first, and then we'll go to Zoom, okay? 1 second. Thank you.
My name is Kenneth Barnes. I'm here with my mother, Ann Barnes, who owns the property at 28 Pine Hill. And it's really not an opposition, it's more of a question, Mr. Chairman, is that they're going for a variance. So my mother owns and pays taxes on the lot. My mother and father had her lot at 29 Pine Hill subdivided. So we just want to make sure that the variance that they're going for wouldn't impact her ability if she decided to build on the lot at 28 Pine Hill Road in any way. So that's what our concern is.
Well, the variances have been received already from the Zoning Board of Appeals, correct, counsel? Correct. Right.
Yeah, that we didn't know. So she just received a
I
letter
mean,
saying,
I'll let counsel try to answer that. So the relief you're looking for shouldn't affect their property, correct? I mean,
affect their property at all. It's just 30.
As a legal
Correct.
person.
It's just our legal, the legal description of the property is all that we're looking to.
yeah, that's all, that's the only assertion we wanted.
Because I know, like, when you come in there, those houses are kind of tight. I mean, I've been there twice in the last 2 weeks. But,
Okay.
yeah. So, I mean, basically, it shouldn't affect your property at all.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
And do we have anybody else in the audience who wants to speak before I go to Zoom? Anybody else in the audience? In the audience? No, none? Okay, who do we have on Zoom, please?
Hi, this is Victoria Richards at 18 Pine Hill Street. I'm also joined by my boyfriend, Patrick McCarthy, at 18 Pine Hill Street, and we're members of the Pine Grove Condo Association, right next to 32 Pine Hill Street.
Hi, can you hear me?
So is that a question? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. So are you in the condos to the left?
Yes, we're in number
So, yeah, so
one.
when you come
but
in the street, you
whole-
go up, the condos are right there. You take the right, your condos are there, and their properties to the right, correct?
Correct. So it's a
Yes.
4-unit townhouse. We're in number one. We share the 4 units, share the backyards fenced in. To the right of unit 4, our entire to the right of our building, about 4 or 5 feet to the right, we have a 9-foot standing retaining wall. I believe the property line with their fence is only about, I want to say, 2 or 3 feet. I think it was 30 inches away from this retaining wall. It just seems like if they're going to be digging, pouring a foundation, everything that, comes included with construction, that retaining wall being on the other side of that, being 9 feet below, seems very unsafe. We have a dog. We have a family that lives in number 2 that has a 4-year-old son. In number 4, there's a family with an elderly woman that lives there. It just doesn't, that lot doesn't seem big enough. I'm not even sure. I believe the attorney said it was 40 feet. I can't see it being 40 feet. I'd have to go out there and actually look at it. But that tree that they brought up takes up most of that frontage of that lot. That retaining wall is just, it doesn't seem like it can take construction and digging and a foundation being poured and then a whole house being built without some sort of damage or safety issues arising. So that's what we feel. That's our main concern. I'd also like to
Whose
add
property is the
that
wall on?
that's our property, 18 Pine Hill.
Counselor, do you know whose property the wall is on?
The property is of 18 Pine Hill Street. It's not our property.
Okay. So you wouldn't be touching the wall?
Wouldn't be touching the
obviously,
wall.
No, because nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with us.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. Bichette was just showing his pictures on the phone. I have them as well, and you can see, we're looking at the wall now, yeah. So the wall would remain, because it's not on your property, you won't be touching the applicant. So the wall shouldn't be removed unless the people on the other property remove it.
That's not the concern. I mean, I know I'm not an engineer. I do have an engineering degree that I got 11 years ago, which really isn't important. But the whole thing is that if they're digging, I don't know how many feet into the ground, and they're digging within, I'd say 10 feet of that wall, I'd have to say there's going to be some disruption. There's going to be some force to that wall. So they may not directly touch it with an excavator, but with their construction, there is major concern that that wall may have some damage when they're digging and pouring concrete. It's just way too close. If it was 20 feet away, there wouldn't be a concern, but since their fence is about 3 feet away from the wall, I can only assume that the foundation is probably going to be within 10 feet of that wall. That is 9 feet tall. It sits at an elevation at least 9 feet higher than our backyard.
Counselor, do you know how far you'll be from the property line once the house is built? I mean, you have to obviously apply by the side yard regulation, correct? Yeah, but you'd have to apply by the side yard regulation, obviously, correct? So for the side yard, right,
That's why, I was just looking at, there's a, not really a topo map, but I mean, it's a map that shows the elevation. Apparently from your site, Counselor, it drops from 118 feet down to 108 with that, so it's a 10-foot drop to that wall.
Right.
I think is probably what the concern is.
Absolutely. I understand his concern.
Yep.
Obviously, whenever there's construction, there's always a risk to the properties around it. If there was any damage to that wall, they'd have an action civilly against my client. My client doesn't want to open himself up to any litigation.
Sure.
They're going to take every precaution necessary on the construction of the house not to disrupt any of the lots around it.
and obviously, usually if people do disrupt something, they usually try to repair it.
Correct.
I mean,
Correct.
like, say if there was, I mean, like, in good faith, if you did something, as you see a lot of times in construction, come in, if they nick a neighbor's fence, they go and fix the fence.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, because there is a slope there, there's no doubt about that, yeah. Would you say it was 10 feet, Mr. Fischel?
10-foot drop.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Counselor, just real quick, are you looking to just follow the topography of that in your development, or are you looking to elevate that? What do you?
On the elevation plans that were submitted, the
Yeah, I
garage-
see this rendering, this pretty much shows just a flat. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Farris can address that better than
Yeah, sure,
okay,
if you would,
that's
thank
fine.
you.
Yeah.
Just state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Good evening, Michael Farris. So the way it's set up, the driveway is going to be cut in. So there will be a cut and a small retaining wall on the side of the driveway, which I guess will be probably about 20 feet from where their wall is.
Okay.
I suspect absolutely no problem whatsoever.
Are you going to put a wall before their wall?
Well, yeah, to retain the dirt from falling into the driveway, but it's not even going to be that high. I think my site guy said it'll be about 3 feet. They commented on it at the ZBA meeting because they asked for some plantings there.
They actually asked for us to side the retaining wall,
Yeah, just to make it dressed up.
so it wouldn't be cement.
Yeah. The soils there, we've already done some test pits. They're very conducive to, digging and not disrupting any wall. It's all light gravel. So I really don't expect any problems at all.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to add? If not at this time, one comment, but now that, Council, you addressed the planning staff comment on, they had a question about adding a window.
That's already a condition from
Okay.
the zoning board.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Okay.
Yeah, I know it says,
Yeah, they had it on our comments, I just wanted to see if.
right, but in the
ZBA,
the ZBA decision, that was a condition to add the window.
so obviously the intent is to add that second-story window. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So I see where it says proposed, okay, so, all right. Okay. Okay, thank you. So if anybody else want to be heard? If not, I'll turn it over to board members. At this time, I'll turn it over to the board. Any of the board members, any comments?
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, Mr. Fischett?
So I'm looking at the decision from the Zoning Board of Appeals. To your point, Counselor, condition, no more than 3 feet of concrete shall be left on the front facade of the new home after construction. The applicant shall submit a landscaping plan for both properties, saving the street tree and showing replacement trees. And the applicant shall add a window on the second story of the new home located above the front door. Regarding the landscape plan, I don't believe anything has been submitted to date, is that correct?
Nothing has been submitted, but if that's a condition of both the zoning board and the planning board, that will definitely be submitted to both.
So again, slightly similar, slightly different than the last application. It is a traditional multifamily zone. You're looking at some of the larger lots are actually populated with the condos.
Correct.
Or 2 families, and you're building 2 single families. So again.
Just one single family,
One
remaining
single
there.
family, I'm sorry, yeah. Well, you've got the existing single
Right.
family, so, yeah, so it's gonna mirror the other 2 that are on the other
Correct.
side of it for the most part. So, yeah, it's in a way, and you just turn the corner, and there's some duplexes that go all the way down. So, and yet, these are single families, so, again, it kind of fitting the development. If you follow what I was saying with
I
the
do-
last
I
one, you're
understand.
following what I'm saying here. So there's a consistency, although it's somewhat different. So I'm just hoping that, I would have liked to have seen the landscape plan, and where that was a condition of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that was, yeah, an undated
That was back in March, though.
October of, was it filed in March?
The hearing,
This
I
year was
believe,
received
like
back in
March.
January 2022. So, yeah, I would have loved to have seen a landscape plan. So I would obviously be looking for that as a condition. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fischett. Caleb, any questions, comments?
So, well, I learned to go to ZBA website to look at the rendering, but since the ZBA have addressed design issues and also DPD staff have commented, so I'm good on that department. One comment from the engineering department, I think they want to look for a utility connection drawing, so,
That was part of it, is that we have to submit it to engineering.
yep.
We have to connect to the sewer, so,
Yeah, right. Oh, you wouldn't even get an occupancy permit, right?
right.
Yep.
So that will be
No
submitted,
sewer connection, no occupancy.
right.
Okay, great. And again, I agreed with other members that the proposed lot matches the rest of the neighborhood. In this case, is more straightforward, so I think your requests have merit.
Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you.
Sinead?
I don't have any questions or comments on the application, just kind of my same comment that I made the last time, that it'd be nice to have the same material that the ZBA has, especially in terms of how the building is laying out on the site and how the landscape is. And I appreciate the applicant saying that they would replace the trees at the same ratio if they're lost or removed. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Malovich, Bob, you have any questions?
No, I think this is pretty cut and dry. This is a lot different than the one prior to this, so I have no concerns or anything with this project.
Thank you. I don't have many comments. I think it meets the subdivision regulations. I'm glad to see that the other window was put on the site, on the building. Sinead, I was thinking of you when I saw that proposed window from previous meetings. I said, pull that out. I remember Sinead being an architect on the board, usually picks that stuff out, so I'm like, that looks a lot nicer, so I'm glad that is going to be approved, so. But besides that, I have no problem with the definitive subdivision. I think it meets the criteria. So we need a single vote for the subdivision.
Mr. Chairman, it's somewhat unique because it is here for subdivision, so I don't even know having a condition of the landscaping plan really is applicable to subdivision approval. So it was submitted as part of the ZBA, and that was a ZBA condition, so I think it's an up or down vote at this point for a subdivision. So I would make a motion to approve the subdivision proposal for 32 Pine Hill Street.
And I will second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bichette, second by Caleb. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Chair votes
Aye.
yes. Bob, you voted yes? Any
Yes.
opposition? Hearing none, the matter is approved. Good luck, Counselor. Wish you well.
Thank you very much. Have a good night,
Good
everyone.
night.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along on the agenda, we have a site plan review and special permit, 1514 Gorham Street. ZR Development LLC has applied to the Lowell Planning Board to construct 6 townhouse-style residential units on the 32,661 square foot property at the above address. The subject property is located in a suburban mixed-use zoning district. The proposal requires site plan review approval per section 11.4 to construct more than 3 residential units, and a special permit approval per 11.3 under section 12.1. And we hear from the applicant, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to all. For the record, my name is John Geary of the law offices of Geary & Geary, LLP, 32 Church Street, Lowell, Mass. I'm here tonight representing ZR Development Group, LLC, and with me tonight is Jim Zorbis, one of the principals of ZR Development. We also have Mark O'Hara of O'Hara Engineer, the engineer for the project. As the chairman mentioned, we're requesting a site plan approval pursuant to 11.4 and a special permit pursuant to 11.3 and 12.1D of the city zoning ordinance to redevelop this property located at 1514 Gorham Street. The parcel is located in the suburban mixed-use zoning district and consists of approximately 32,661 square feet of land. In addition to the application and the narrative, I've provided the board with a site plan, a stormwater report, floor plans and elevations, and there was a landscape plan worked into the floor plan and elevation plan that you have. My narrative goes into good detail as to how this application meets criteria for site plan approval and issuance of the special permit, but nonetheless, I'll take a few minutes and run through the project for the board's benefit. The applicant is proposing to develop this vacant parcel of land into 6 townhouse-style condominium units, which will ultimately be sold to owner-occupants. For the most part, the units will be identical and consist of 3 bedrooms and 2 full baths and consist of approximately 1,250 square feet of living space. The neighborhood in which the property is located within consists of many condominium units, both garden-style and townhouse-style units, along the easterly side of Gorham Street, which is our side of Gorham Street. The westerly side of the street, the other side of the street, has many single-family homes and some multifamily homes. There's also a lot of neighborhood businesses running throughout the corridor of this area of Gorham Street. There are also a couple of other rather large townhouse developments in close proximity to both the south and the north of this property. The topography of the lot slopes downward from Gorham Street to the to the Concord River. The applicants filed a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission the applicant doesn't anticipate any impact to the wetland area as a result of the layout that we're proposing, and that the conservation meeting is actually scheduled for next Wednesday, next week. The applicant has sufficient off-street parking for this proposal. The project requires 14 spaces. The applicant is providing 15 spaces. The applicant is proposing to incorporate parking for the property at the front of the property and away from the wetland area, with the structure, the buildings, being set back off of Gorham Street. And although most of the existing properties along Gorham Street are constructed closer to Gorham Street, by setting the structure deeper into the lot, in this instance, it allows the developer to incorporate more landscape and less impervious materials onto the site. The DPD staff provided several comments on the proposal, so I'll run through those as well. So comments 1 through 3 essentially summarize the project, the approvals that we're requesting, the zoning district that we're in, and the scope of the project, all of which I've mentioned. Comment number 4 confirms that we do not need any ZBA relief. We comply with all of the dimensional requirements of the SMU zoning district. Comment number 5 indicates that the proposal requires 14 parking spaces and that there are some inconsistencies with regard to the site plan and the elevation plan. So the applicant is proposing 15 parking spaces. The parking was shown on the elevation floor plans prior to the engineering being completed, so that was, unfortunately, that was not updated. But the site plan is correct. We're proposing 15 parking spaces. Comment number 6, so similar to comment number 5, there's an inconsistency with regard to the usable open space. And again, I can chalk that up to the elevation plan being done prior to Mark completing his engineering. So we will be providing 2,500 square feet of usable open space. Comment number 7 speaks to the snow storage area provided on the plan. Of course, the applicant would agree to a proposed condition that any snow that cannot be stored on site be removed, if that is the case. Comment number 8, the staff mentions that the landscape on the elevation plan is somewhat different than that on the site plan. There is some differences between the two plans. We are working on a landscape plan to submit to the DPD for DPD's approval. We will also include lighting in that plan. Comment 10, staff notes the design of the units complements the neighborhood, and that was done with intention by the developer and the architect. Comment number 11, the units will have plenty of storage for bikes. Each unit has a full basement. I would imagine that the residents would prefer to store their bikes indoors, so there should be plenty of room to do that. Comment number 12, the applicant is proposing to contract for private trash and recycling pickup, with each unit owner having separate trash and recycling bins, much like most residents in the cities have, although it will be private pickup. And we would suggest that there would be plenty of storage behind the units to store the 2 bins. Comment number 13 reiterates that the proposal matches the character of the existing neighborhood. We believe that in this case, that is the case, and that the proposal will actually enhance the character of the neighborhood. Comment number 14, staff mentions that they generally like to see the structures closer to the street, but staff is supportive of this proposal to locate the structures deeper into the lot, considering the topography and the nearby wetlands. I had previously mentioned that as well. Comment number 15 speaks to the character of the existing neighborhood, which I mentioned previously, and that the proposal aligns with the character of the neighborhood and will benefit the area. Comment number 16 reiterates, which was something that I already stated, that we need no relief, no dimensional relief from the ZBA. Comments 17 through 19 go on to mention that DPD is supportive of the proposal and that the project will bring a much-needed middle housing to the city while also supporting the economic vitality of the city. The design planner had some comments as well. So she indicated that that it's a thoughtful proposal and design that fills the gap of the missing middle housing within the city. She goes on to indicate that the applicant should be conscientious of the site's proximity to the Concord River. Mark has been working and will continue to work with the stormwater team in the city to make sure that we are sensitive to the location of the river. So at this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Mark. Mark will go through the engineering comments, and then we'll come back and summarize.
Thank you, John. Mark O'Hara, 21 Mansion Drive, Lowell, Mass. O'Hara Engineering. I'm going to go over the utilities, the drainage, give you a brief summary. It's a narrow lot, 60 feet wide by about 500 feet long. It goes from Gorham Street down to the, as John had said, down to the Concord River. It's not in the floodplain where we're proposing the development. The drainage, the existing drainage does run from, that would be west to east. We will continue to follow that path. We're proposing to capture the runoff, to treat the runoff, to remove the suspended solids, and to detain the runoff such that in the developed state there will be less runoff and the runoff will be treated. As John had mentioned, we're going to be meeting with conservation next week, and so there were some comments from engineering with regards to what types of silt fence or hay bales, but we'll be addressing that. It is shown in the plans. We are showing some silt fence in the plan. With regards to utilities, there is sewer and there's water and there's gas out in the street, so we'll be bringing those into the site. For the sewer, because of the elevation difference, we're going to have to run a sewer pump station. I know there's some comment about going into a sewer manhole and then gravity to the existing sewer system. And we have no issues with that. I do want to mention that DEP gets involved whenever you file for a sewer pump station. So they may have some comment, but we're willing to work with whether it's the city or DEP. And yeah, there was a comment about the snow storage. I think we show it on the plans as being on both sides of the parking lot. It may have not been picked up by them, but I believe we do have room for snow storage. And in the event we have, a rare situation, we would bring that snow storage off-site. Yeah, I think that's about it. I think it's a pretty, well laid out but simple plan. But I'm here to answer any questions.
If it's not enough, take it off, yeah.
So in summary, the applicant's proposal is consistent with the city's master plan and sustainable goal 2025. It provides much-needed housing to the city, as well as the real estate tax revenue that goes along with that new housing. The beneficial impacts of this project would far exceed any negative effects of the project, if any, and we don't believe there are any. Ultimately, the development will be a positive contribution to the neighborhood. So for those reasons, we would respectfully request approval of the site plan and issuance of the special permit this evening. But we're happy to answer any questions that the board members may have, or the public for that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Does anybody else from the applicant want to speak, Counsel? Okay. All right, so at this point in time, I'll open up to the public. Anybody this evening like to speak in favor of this project on 1514 Gorham Street? Anybody in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none. Anybody in opposition? Anybody? Just come to the microphone, please, and state your name and address.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, my name's John Gorassi, and I live at 1524 Gorham Street, so that's right next to the lot. And I'll say I've lived there for over 20 years. That lot that they want to develop on, there was actually a hearing a few years ago. I'm not sure exactly how many. I know it was declined at the time, and the square footage of that lot has remained the same since. So although I get what you're trying to do, unfortunately, it would definitely impact us. We're near the back of the building, and we're actually facing that lot. And I'll also add that in that area are, we'll call cement bays, not sure of the actual technical term, but that's where the air conditionings for the central AC are housed. And so I don't think that if the land is removed, that I'd feel confident that it's going to work for that much size, for the square footage of the snow removal, or anything like that. So do I think it would be a good fit for the neighborhood? No. And if that many units, I'd say respectfully, definitely, absolutely not.
I'm sorry, sir, do you live in the condominiums that are next door?
That is correct. And I know back when there was a hearing before, the snow removal was one of the items in contention at that time.
Anything else, sir?
That should do it on my end.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, just come to the microphone, give us your name, please, ma'am.
My name is Kathleen Garassi. That was my husband, John, that just spoke. All I ask is that if the board members have not driven by this area, I just please ask that you do, so that you can actually have your eyes on this plot of land that someone thinks is actually a good idea to put these townhouses there. It's such a narrow strip of land, it boggles my mind. I mean, maybe I'd have to see it to believe it, but I do not see how this could possibly work. I believe the last hearing was maybe around 2015, when it was denied when someone else was trying to build townhouses there as well. So I do ask to please drive by the site and just see what they're trying to build on this plot of land. Thank you.
Well, me and Mike can tell you that we've been up there. I've been up there on 2 different occasions, 2 weeks ago and again last week, and both times I parked in Linwood Animal Hospital parking lot. Yeah, I know, but didn't say no trespassing, so I got out and I walked the site. I did it 2 weeks ago, then I did it again last Thursday. I got pictures on my phone. I know other board members have been up there as well. Yeah, because it's right before the Chelmsford line, right before you go over 495, Concord River's right behind it. Yeah, very familiar with it, yeah. But we have been up there. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Counselor, yes.
So,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I can't speak to the previous application. I don't have any knowledge of that whatsoever. All I can say is
Unfortunately, it was
that,
Attorney Flood, but he's no longer with us, but we do recall, Mr. Fischett and I do recall sitting here when that project came in.
sure. So, I don't know what the scope of that project was, but I can, you can see by the plans that we have submitted, it does fit the lot. We have sufficient parking. We understand it's a narrow lot, but it's a good infill for this lot. I can understand that neighbors don't want, would prefer to see a wooded lot forever, but it's not, it's not always the case.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? I'm just got the
On
microphone,
Zoom?
please, sir. I mean, sit there, people at home can't see you or hear you.
Yeah, I just want to throw in, I'm not saying it's one extreme or another. And to put words in my mouth, absolutely, I did not say that I think it should be wooded forever. But what I do say, similar to putting a foot in a correct size shoe, if it was to be developed, which is of course converse to never developing it, but I would think that it could be geared down in size and maybe be a better fit for that, in air quotes, shoe.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else want to be heard from the public at this time? Hearing none, I'll turn over
Someone
to any
on
of the board
Zoom?
members at this time.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, Mr. Fischett, you wanna go ahead.
So
my
first
mic
of all,
working?
when I read all the material, a line that jumped out at me, because it's nice to see, was item number 4 on the DPD's memo. The proposal meets all zoning requirements under the Lowell zoning ordinance and does not require variance approval from the zoning board of appeals. It's nice to see a project come through of this size that actually meets all the dimensional requirements. And to the chairman's point, both of us were sitting here when the prior project was presented, and it was Attorney Flood. It was actually a mixed-use proposal. And so what they were trying to do is put a an office to run their business, management business out of it, to call it mixed use, and call it under the SMU, under all other uses, there is absolutely no minimum lot size, no minimum lot area per dwelling unit. Frontage is 25 feet, no minimum yard setbacks. So that's what they're trying to take advantage of with the setbacks. So this project is saying, look, we're strictly residential, and we're complying with all the setback requirements, the frontage, the lot size. So it really conforms across the board on that. So I have to say, that was the big difference from the prior project. And I actually walked that site with boots on thoroughly to get a good feel for that site. And I know, to your point, the site hasn't changed from that time. I would like, Counselor, if you could, I'm just trying to envision, we've had some other issues with condo developments with the trash pickup. So if you could kind of, I'm just trying to envision how that would work with the setup. And I kind of like this. I actually like this with the, because when you drive by, it's going to have more of an open feeling with the parking up front, rather than have the buildings up front. So I actually like this setup, but I'm just a little curious as how the trash is going to be picked up.
Right. So the idea would be to store the bins for each unit. Each unit would have 2 bins like most homes in the city have, and they would be stored behind the unit. So if you're looking at the elevations, it's the rear, it's the left side elevation, which you see bulkheads on that side, so that will tell you you're on the right elevation. There's plenty of room in the back of those units to store the bins, and then on whatever day the trash is being, or recycling is being picked up, they're brought out to the street like most homeowners do.
But it'll be it's a private pickup, right?
It is a private pickup. I mean, I suppose it could be arranged for the contractor to pull into the site and pick up, but it might be just as easy to do it, off of Gorham Street. Certainly something the developer can work with the vendor on.
Yeah, because there's how many units?
Talking 6, right?
We've got 6 townhouses, so
It'd be-
on recycle day, you'd have 12 bins out there conceivably, right?
No, you'd have, well, if they pick up on the same day, you'd have 12.
Right, every other
But
week.
if you stagger it,
No.
trash one day and,
Oh, yeah, it's not the city pickup, it's whatever you would work out with.
right.
Yeah, okay. And so defining the rear, if I look at the site plan, so we have a concrete walk, that would be defined as the front. Is that correct? So then facing the Linwood Hospital, you're considering the rear of the property?
That's right.
The rear of the
It's the
complex.
left side elevation, which is the north side of the property.
The left side elevation, right here.
Marking my directionals right there.
Okay. Oh, and there's the bulkheads, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I would really like to see from the landscape plan some way of providing some sort of screening.
For the bins?
Yeah, I mean, you've got 6 units there, it's just,
Well, certainly we can work with DPD to come up with a solution to that.
yeah. Because once you pull in, because it's hard to visualize right now, because when you pull into Linwood, it's all wooded, that lot. But I think, once you develop it and you pull into that Linwood parking lot, that whole rear of that is going to be exposed. Just so it look better. I mean,
Yeah.
even for selling it, for appeal for
Yeah.
selling it.
No question.
I think it would look better, so,
We're happy to work with DPD to come up with a solution for that.
yeah. Okay. And then I see where you have the snow storage. It's not a lot of space, but again, we've effectively used the condition where it would be removed off the site.
Of course.
So, yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Caleb, any questions?
I guess following up on Mr. Frechette, comment about where the bins are. There, so is the elevation plan what's more representative, or the site plan more representative regarding whether there is a?
I would suggest it would be the elevation plan and the left side elevation, which shows what would be considered the back of the units. You'll see it,
I see a kind of. I also see a walk in the back, right?
you also see your what?
A paved area, a paved walkway. Is that what I'm seeing on the elevation on the first, in the
I
top?
have a large size plan here if you'd like to take a look at it.
Yeah. Well, if we can put it up, I can just point to
I
it.
don't know if this is big enough, does that help? Then-
Well, it will be on the
Sure.
colored
If you-
one. Oh, there. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because I would think that making sure they can hear. If there is like bins in the back, I suppose they're wheeled. If the bins are wheeled, you don't want to drag them across the lawn. So,
Right, and I've seen it throughout the city where there's private pickup. The private vendors do have the bins similar to what the city provides.
Yeah.
You wheel them out to the street from wherever they're stored.
so are there a paved walkway in the back as well? Am I reading the elevation,
there
is
one
right? I mean, I see some.
I think Caleb, what's shown on the architectural plans is different than what's on the site plan. I think that's why there's confusion.
Sorry, what was that?
What's shown on the architectural plans is different than on the site plans, and that's why
Right.
there's confusion.
So on the architectural, you're looking at the 5-foot sidewalk, is that what you're seeing? The highlighted gray area, if you will?
Yep, on the left side.
Right,
Of the.
on the north side. So I don't think the site plan shows that, but we can certainly incorporate that into the site plan.
Okay.
So that there is a walk, and it makes sense if you're going to be wheeling
Yeah, we'll.
rather heavy bins from the back up to the street, it would make sense.
But I suppose it could be pervious too, if there's like impervious. Well, I think we have pervious blocks instead of
And I think
the concrete.
pavers would qualify for that.
Okay.
So we can, that's something we can work with DPD to
Yeah.
incorporate.
I mean, we don't want to add more impervious
Right, and that's
service,
one
but
of our goals as well.
you don't want rut like
Right.
wheel rut across the lawn. So okay, great. And I think I also concur with Mr. Frechette that I want to see, that you can make sure the landscaping plan can also buffer with, let's say, your neighbor, so that there will be less visual impact. And I think the layout is great. I mean, it's good because now the front is facing the neighbor, so at least there is a distance. And then there is also room for a vegetative buffer. So I agree that everything fits and you provide the required amount of parking. So I think this is a good plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. Sinead?
No comments, thanks.
Okay. Bob, I know you're on Zoom. Do you have any questions or concerns?
I have no questions. I think, I like the development being in the middle of the site with the parking up front, and they're sitting in a little green area. It really enhances the livability of those units. So I really think it's a nice development that has been conceived here.
Thank you, Bob. Okay. think, Attorney Gary, when you went through all the requests from planning staff, the only other ones were the engineer comments, which were on the last page, I think, 22 to 32. Do you have any comments on any of those?
I think Mark addressed some of those.
Yeah. But I think there was a couple that hadn't been addressed. I don't know if you have any. I know he talked about the gravity sewer. There's a question about the curb opening 30 feet instead of the 24, closer to 30.
So I think
Talks about some
the
curb
idea
cut.
there is to show a straight line curb as opposed to, so it will be 24 feet.
Yeah, and then about the plan shows a curb of the driveway across the sidewalk. Remove the curb in the sidewalk area from the plan and add 2 curb corners along the curb line in the street. So no problem with that, I take it?
No, no problem with,
Okay.
no problem with any of this. really.
City permits, that's basic.
Yeah, he talked about the erosion control
Yeah,
and all that.
pave all the utility
discussed
cut.
at
Right.
conservation as
And they
well.
need as-built, okay. And remove them, he set the curb on Gorham Street within the frontage of the property and construct new
Right,
concrete sidewalks. You okay with the sidewalks?
we are.
Okay. And you mentioned okay. And I know you said you did have the snow storage, there's some on site, and planning staff asked if need be, if you need additional, yet you'd take it off-site?
And that would be agreeable.
Okay. So, on number 31, conditions of erosion controls must be checked after weather events. So how does that get done? I mean,
I think that.
and, you know, what
Correct me if I'm
weather
wrong,
event?
Mark, but I think that we, the developer is responsible for putting up the erosion control.
Right.
Where necessary, so that's marked out. And then I think the conservation sends somebody out there, or they have our agent report back confirming that it's done. But it is an important aspect of the, of the.
So, a lot of that,
filing.
I assume, would be picked up on conservation, correct?
Correct, I'm sorry.
Conservation will address the
Yes.
majority of that when you go before them?
Yes, they will be, they'll be the controlling body, if you will,
Right.
to monitor that.
Yeah, yeah. Because most of your wetlands are in what, the front, off the street in the front of the building, right?
No, the wetlands are to the rear
Oh,
of the
the
property.
down the rear, not in the front then, right?
Yeah, and we
Okay.
don't think we're gonna come all that close to the wetlands.
Okay.
We're-
So it's all down,
Yeah,
it's
we'll
all the way
be-
down by the river in the back then?
Yeah, right.
None in the front coming in?
It slopes down, way, so we're gonna be 25 feet off off any wetland line.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So your request is you're looking for a site plan approval as well as a special permit, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Board members have any further questions, or not, what's the request of the board? So we need 2 votes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the site plan with the following conditions.
Why did my mic not work?
That the applicant shall remove any snow which cannot be stored on site to an off-site location. The applicant shall submit an updated landscaping plan for DPD approval, emphasizing a screening for trash bins located on the rear of the condominiums, at the rear of the condominiums. The applicant will, and this is more of a, you don't have much choice, but comply with engineering requirements on the site. And just for clarification, I just would like to make conditions that, as stated by the applicant, because there was some inconsistencies, that they are providing 15 off-street parking spaces as provided, as shown on the site plan, and that they are providing 2,500 square feet of usable open space. Just to clarify and make that a condition so that there's not any confusion as to what was submitted.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the site plan with several conditions. You okay with the conditions, Peter? You got those? Okay. Do we have a second on the site plan?
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr.
Chairman.
Malovich. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, the site plan is approved.
Thank you.
So now we need a vote on the special permit.
You're not so fast, Counsel. This is the tricky one, the special permit. No. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the special permit incorporating all of the conditions that were set forth in the site plan.
So we have a motion by Mr. Bichette to approve the special permit with the same conditions as outlined on the site plan. Do we have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Mr. Malovich again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, the special permit is approved as well. Good luck. Wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming down and speaking. Appreciate it very much.
Nope, one more to go.
Moving along on the agenda, we have a site plan review and special permit at St. Louis School, 7274 Bolivar Street and 253 West 6th Street. CR Development Group LLC has applied to the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals to redevelop the existing St. Louis School building into 19 residence with 24 off-street parking spaces. The application requires site plan review under section 11.4 to construct more than 3 dwelling units, and a special permit approval for the conversion of an existing historic school under section 8.1. The applicant also requires variance approvals before the Zoning Board of Appeals for section 6.1 for relief for off-street parking, section 5.1 for relief from land area per dwelling unit requirement and usable open space, and under section 8.1.34 for relief from the minimum square foot requirement and for any other relief under the zoning ordinance. I know this matter was before us back in April. We had a lot of testimony from the neighbors, a lot of pictures, a lot of questions, and we had a couple of people speak in favor. We had a list of people who opposed, then the matter was continued, and then they continued the matter again to go to before the ZBA to address the variance request. And now the matter is back before us. So can we hear from the applicant, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, for the record, my name is Sean Geary of the law offices of Geary & Geary LLP, 32 Church Street, Lowell, Mass. I'm here tonight representing ZR Development Group. We have Jim Zorbis, one of the principals of ZR Development Group. We have Kerry Owens and Gary Thomas of North Point Management Construction, part of the design-build contractor for the project. And we have Mark O'Hara again, the engineer for the project. And as the chairman mentioned, this we were first heard in April and then again in early June on this matter before this board. At the June meeting, and since that time, actually, we've presented a revised site plan, revised floor plan, and elevation plans. At the June meeting, the June 6th meeting, this board suggested that we deal with that we go before the Zoning Board of Appeals in terms of seeking our relief for this project. We agreed to do that considering that the relief was pretty substantial that we were requesting. We went to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We had 2 meetings. At the first meeting, the board acknowledged that the difficulty of repurposing a property such as the St. Louis School, but thought it was a worthwhile project and asked that the applicant go back to the drawing board in terms of finding additional off-street parking. One of the board members actually suggested that we look at decreasing the parking spaces to get more spaces on site. So we did that. We went back to the drawing board. The initial revised plan that we came up with actually had excess parking. We had more than 39 parking spaces, but we decided to scrap that plan because the lot was overwhelmed with parking. So we decided to scrap that plan. And after taking another look at our options, the applicant came up with the plan that's before you tonight. So that plan accounts for 34 of the 39 parking spaces to be located on site, resulting in the need for relief of only 4 parking spaces. By slightly reducing the size of the parking spaces, we were able to get more parking within the main parking area. So we have the main parking area where we have 25 parking spaces. We have 4 parking spaces facing the building, so a total of 29 parking spaces in that main area. We've also redesigned the rear of the property so that in addition to the 5 parking spaces that we are proposing off of Bolio Street, we're still able to provide usable open space for the tenants. One of our concerns in using the rear of the property for parking was giving up the usable open space for the tenant. We were able to keep that, albeit not as much as we had initially proposed, but still a significant amount. The applicant's also proposing to use a material known as grasscrete for the parking surface in the rear of the building in our efforts to minimize the amount of impervious materials on the site. I would suggest that every hearing that we have had regarding this matter, before you, the planning board, before the zoning board, as well as the meetings that the applicant has attended with the neighborhood, the overwhelming concerns seem to relate to the amount of off-street parking, the amount of relief we needed for off-street parking. The initial amount was 14 parking spaces. We could only provide, our initial plan showed 24 parking spaces. We needed 38, so we were seeking relief of 14 parking spaces. We believe that the revised parking plan, together with the available parking, on-street parking along Beauvais Street, essentially solves the parking problem and for the most part keeps all of the cars associated with this development on the lot. The ZBA agreed with our rationale there, and they granted relief for parking, as well as all the other relief we were requesting. I guess, in an effort to deal with the, one of the concerns with parking on Bolio Street, one of the additional concerns was we had initially designed the parking in the main parking area to flow in from West 6th Street, out onto Beauvais Street, and up onto West 6th. Beauvais is a one-way street, so basically all of the cars were flowing in and out of the site in that little corner, not really impacting the neighborhood. So adding cars to Bolio Street was a concern, but one solution to that is to possibly assign parking to any units that would be using those 5 spaces on Bolio Street. So there would not be everybody in the development having a need to drive down Bolio to see if there was an available space on one of those 5 spaces on Bolio Street. So we think that by assigning the spaces, could be a good solution to averting any additional unnecessary traffic through the neighborhood. Fran has also provided us with some updated comments on this project. So comment number 1 mentions the revised plans and the changes to those plans. Mark and Kerry will review those in just a few minutes. Fran also goes on to mention that we are reducing the impervious materials on site from 100% to 80%, which is a significant reduction considering the critical need in the city to mitigate the combined stormwater overflows, and represents yet another example as to how this proposal will benefit the city. Comment number 2 mentions the conditions that were incorporated into the applicant's ZBA approvals, such as planting shade trees and working with the DPD to finalize a landscape plan. The applicant would agree, of course, to any condition, any approval tonight being conditioned upon the DPD approving our landscape plan. Comment number 3, Fran reiterates that this project would be a positive addition to the Centerville neighborhood and a good reuse of this building, considering that the project will be reducing impervious materials on site, improving stormwater management, and adding landscape and streetscaping to the site, none of which is there now. We also received comments from this morning from the traffic engineer. I don't know if the board had a chance to see those, but I certainly did. So those were given to us in bullet point form in the form of an email. So the first bullet point, the traffic engineer points out that the parking study may not have factored in residential parking signage in front of properties, and that may well be the case. But even if that study's off 70%, we still have sufficient on-street parking to handle the capacity that we would require for this project. And the traffic engineer seemed to agree with that as well. The second bullet point, the traffic engineer opines that the 29 parking spaces in the main parking area would seem to be sufficient for this development based on recent parking studies We agree, and we have maintained all along that this project will not require 2 parking spaces for each unit. There's no chance of that happening. The next bullet point, the traffic engineer indicates that the flow through the main parking area makes sense and is acceptable. I talked about that just a few minutes ago. It does make sense. It keeps the cars, for the most part, from going within the neighborhood. The next bullet point, the engineer suggests that the applicant provide LRTA schedules as part of its move-in materials and update our transportation demand plan. To do that, we're of course happy to do that. And then the last bullet point, traffic engineer indicates that the 5 parking spaces that we're proposing to the rear of the property of the building are probably not necessary based on the recent study that she suggests in one of her earlier comments. But as I mentioned previously, these spaces were included at the request of the ZBA members. And in my discussions with one of the neighborhood members, Sandy McNamara, she had indicated to me that she would like to see parking off of Bolio Street at the rear of the property because it seemed to me that the more cars we can get off the street, the better. So we did just that. We took the ZBA's suggestion. We incorporated parking to the rear of the building. We did it by using pervious materials. We were able to maintain the usable open space for the tenants, and I think it's a good solution. So at this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Mark. Mark can review the revisions to the site plan and any engineering comments, and then Kerry will review the changes to the elevations on the floor plans.
Thank you, John. Once again, Mark O'Hara, O'Hara Engineering, 21 Mansion Drive. The engineering changes since the last time we met have been minimal. It's really been going back and forth with the number of parking spaces. I believe we had shown 24. We ended up with a plan, like John said, of 38. I believe we have 34 shown. The comments that I got from staff were, sewer connections, water connections, make sure that you're doing it in compliance with our city standards. There was some comments about bringing the sidewalk back up to grade, so we provided a grading plan. We relocated the bicycle rack. I think we have one inside and one outside. And again, we've been trying to maximize the amount of pervious material on the site to reduce the amount of impervious. And I think the fact that the figure is somewhere between 20 and 25%. So there will be just naturally less runoff, but we've been working with Mike Stewart over at the Lowell Regional Wastewater Utility, and we've designed the site to recharge a full 1 inch of water over the totally impervious area. So there will be significant amount of surface runoff reduced. Yeah, I believe that's about it. There were some minor, additions of additional utilities that we show on the plans, and I believe we have a landscaping plan that we've added to the plan set. Other than that, I think we're good. I don't know, Kerry, did you want to come up and speak? All right.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kerry Owen of North Point Construction Management, located at 22 Hampshire Drive in Hudson, New Hampshire. I'd like to speak on behalf of the plan revisions that we have made to the floor plans. There haven't been any revisions to the exterior elevations other than the additional parking spaces and reduction of the tenant space in the rear of the property. On the floor plans, what we have added is as you enter in at street level on Beauvais Street, there'll be built-in mail slots directly at the entry. That will include a mail slot for each tenant as well as some additional parcel lockers. From there, you will head down a small flight or half flight of stairs to the first floor level. We've reduced the utility space and we added a secured package delivery room for the tenants for just security for package delivery. Along the rear of the property, on Beauvais side, on Bolio Street, there is the rear entry where we've got the additional 5 parking spaces. We have added 9 internal bike rack storage, as well as a transportation board area that will list things like city transportation requirements or bus routes, things like that. And I believe that's all the changes we have made to the plans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. If I could just circle back for a moment on the landscape plan. So the, one of the conditions of approval from the ZBA was to submit a landscape plan acceptable to DPD. So we're just about done that and just about ready to submit it, but we figured we might as well get some input see if there's any input from this board before we do that. Other than that, as I stated at previous meetings, this proposal aligns with the city's comprehensive master plan and sustainable Lowell 2025 by converting this vacant historic building into multifamily residential use. Both of those plans, the master plan and sustainable Lowell 2025, were adopted with input from all neighborhoods, including the Centerville neighborhood. It is exactly what was anticipated for the reuse of this type of building. Article 8.1 is in place for a reason. It allows for a pathway to reuse a building such as the St. Louis School. It is unquestionably the best reuse of this property. It provides the city with the highest possible real estate tax revenues while stabilizing the building for decades to come. The applicant meets all of the criteria for issuance of the special permit, and so for those reasons, we would respectfully request issuance of the special permit and approval of the site plan this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councilor. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to the public at this time. Anybody here this evening like to speak in favor of this project? Anybody in favor? Yes, sir. Just state your name and address for the record, if you would, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Josh McCabe. I live at 62 Fairmount Street, and I'm here as a concerned member of the community who is really worried about Lowell meeting its housing needs. And I see this project, and I fully support it because it checks all the right boxes. It adds 19 new homes. It's adaptive reuse. It keeps a beautiful old school and reuses it. And it gives us studios, 1-bedrooms, sort of the buildings we need so that families can right-size, they can downsize it, they can start their family there. We need more of that in Lowell. And it's got plenty of parking. I think that last time I checked according to the census, about a third of households in Lowell have 1 or 0 cars. So I think that 24 spots is enough. I think that 34 spots is definitely enough. And if we're really concerned about having too many cars on the road, about having people right-size the number of cars they have and right-sizing the families, this project does a really good job of that, and that's why I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? In favor? Anybody like to speak against, in opposition?
I have some copies of some documents.
Sure.
Sure. See what it is that I'm talking about as I speak. Maureen Kelleher, Unsworth Street in Lowell. You know how you know that a project is the absolute wrong project. When you claim that you are fixing a problem and create a whole nother host of problems for yourself. And these problems are all self-created problems. There's nothing wrong with the parking lot. There's nothing wrong with the building. There's nothing wrong with the neighborhood. The overdevelopment of this building is what the problem with this project is. The first problem that now has been created is that you now have 5 parking spaces behind the building on Bolio Street. Bolio Street is a street that runs in both directions covered with on-street parking at 5 a.m. It's also the street that they need to use to be able to bring their children to and from the Green Elch School. There's been no traffic study done with respect to what these new 5 spaces are now going to do to the goings-on in the neighborhood behind this building. Everything focused on Boisevert Street before this. Now you're bringing in a whole nother section from West 6th Street all the way up to Hildreth Street for this one single project. Problem number 2 is the fact that you're going to now take the fence down at the back of the building because you can't have 5 parking spaces without giving them access from Bolio Street. Right now, there is a fence across the back of the building, and cars park along that section of Bolio Street behind the school. You've now taken that down, and you're going to put 5 spots that are supposed to be 9 feet wide, which is 45 feet across Bolio Street that you are now taking. In the rendition that you were given, it indicates that that's a loss of 2 on-street parking spaces. Now, last time that I read anything, if there was a fraction involved and it's zoning or any of this, you round up, you don't round down. So at a minimum, you're talking a loss of an additional 3 on-street parking spaces on a street that is already so ridiculously congested that it can't take the loss of another 3. I don't even know what that distance is from the back of the school building to the sidewalk itself, because I tried looking through the things that had been submitted. I'm not an architect, but I couldn't get exactly what that dimension is. But in any event, you're going to have people parking basically right on the sidewalk, or they're going to go into the back of the building, one or the other. It's absolutely ridiculous. And if it's a parking space, it's a parking space. If it's open space, it's open space. I don't care what you cover it with. It doesn't change what it is, and it doesn't change the effect on this neighborhood this whole project is causing. The second problem that was created, the width of the spaces, the angled spaces in this parking lot need to be 9 feet wide. It's right here in the zoning code. Angled parking spaces may be used to satisfy some or all of a project's off-street parking requirements. Angled parking spaces must conform to the dimensions outlined in the table for the zone in which they are located. So, on their own, they decreased the 9 foot that's required to 7.75. I'm sure the zoning board knew, and I'm sure you people probably knew, that in order to do that, a special permit is required from the zoning board. No special permit was ever requested from the zoning board, because to do that, they would have had to start all over again and notify all the abutters of the change that they were then making in this parking lot. You need 9 feet because you got to angle in and you got to angle back out. One truck in there, and you're going to be lucky to give them a foot, 6 inches on each side, to even be able to open a door. So there's no special permit for them to even be able to put this before you at 7.75 feet per space. And again, I've included that in what I've given you as well. It says, the Board of Appeals may grant special permit modifying the requirements listed in this table in cases of a mechanical garage or in case the board is satisfied the parking facility will be used by cars less than standard size, provided the total number of spaces conforms to section 6.14. You pick your poison. You either get the variance on the number or you get the special permit on the size of the spaces. You don't get them both. So the plan that is before you, despite the fact that the zoning board gave them 4 variances, they didn't give them a special permit, and that's required. That's number 1. And with everything that you people have sat through on this project, I'm asking you to just do your job and not allow this plan to go forward on the backs of this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. Regina Fataconti, 169 Bunker Hill Ave. I want to thank the board for holding this hearing tonight to ensure that the St. Louis project is what is best for the Centerville neighborhood. I used the community blog to make people aware of this meeting, and Mr. Josh McCabe from Belvedere accused me of getting my house and then pulling up the ladder, meaning I didn't want anybody else in my neighborhood. I wrote him back privately out of my respect for him to let him know it's that we don't want anybody else in our neighborhood, the neighborhood in the city that is the most racially and ethnically diverse. What we're looking for is a project that does not harm our neighborhood. Now, what question would I raise to you to show you what harm would be for our neighborhood? And again, it is the traffic issue. If you are a parent trying to drop off or pick your child up from the Greenouts School, this is going to be an added burden on that neighborhood. We are not against progress, but we do have some very specific concerns that this will negatively affect our neighborhood and our quality of life. What we're asking for is a development with less units. You know, this project may check all the boxes if you live in Belvedere, but this project does not check all the boxes if you live in the Centerville neighborhood. I'd also like to address the fact that we did previously give to the board a list of 100 of our neighbors who were against the project in its current form. I would also like to say that I stand here with my neighbors, very concerned. I understand that some people found 5 spots, but there is no way that the developers or, as I do respect Attorney Gary, can guarantee that there will be only 1 parking spot necessary for each of the units. Visitors, family, friends, and if you have 2 people per unit, there are most probably going to be 2 cars. I heard a lot of talk about the bicycle racks, and I assert again, respectfully, to everybody here, none of us drove our bicycles here tonight. So with that, I want to stand for my neighborhood. I want to stand for my neighbors. Some of us have been in this neighborhood for generations, so we did not pull up our ladders. We stuck around for the long haul. None of us wants to see a project that will do harm to our neighbors and our quality of life. And therefore, I would respectfully ask this board to take all of that into consideration when making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Sandy McNamara, President of Centerville Community Coalition. And you probably heard my name rolled under the bus, but that's all right. I've been under there before. But I want to make it perfectly clear. This contractor, from day one, even at our meetings, have continuously brought in plans. First meeting, they brought in 2 separate plans that they passed around the room. Couldn't answer questions. And just the neighborhood that were there was 30-some odd people there and were very disgusted with it. Second meeting came around, they left the first partner home, and the second partner come out, and a lot of things went crazy again. There wasn't answers that wanted to be answered. They couldn't be, or they didn't. In the very beginning, this contractor has done nothing but for their own gain and their own benefit. They come in with 19 units. They come in with lost parking. Yes, I've talked to them about the parking issue many a times. Yeah, you gotta find the spots. One way or the other, you gotta find the spots. Whether you're taking your camping ground away or whatever, you gotta find the spots. There's no available spots on the streets. So, again, this city needs housing, but this city is looking for low income, middle income. Housing that is well needed in this city. High rental units belong, like she said, in Belvedere or in Pawtuckaville, because they sure don't belong in Centerville, because nobody in Centerville, I believe, could afford them. And again, we asked nicely from the very beginning, just lower a few units. You're asking to lower the size of these units, which one is against the state law, because this city governs on the state sanitary code. The state sanitary code has the footage, and no one can change the square footage of those rooms but the state. And our inspectors have to go out and enforce that. If they're allowed to do smaller units, what's going to happen when their building permit's all done and now they need to get a vacancy certificate? That inspector has to close down that unit because it's undersized. And that's the law. That's not just me talking. I have the state code with me. If you guys would like it, you're welcome to take it. And again, they haven't worked with the neighborhood at all. And it's about the quality of life. The quality of life that surrounds them, gigantic 6-family building that touches them. No on-street parking. On the other side of them, in the front of the school, 3-family, no on-street, all on the street, but I mean no off-street parking. And then on this side, it's a 2-family that has to have street parking plus their driveway. In back of that is a 4-family that, again, has enough spaces for 2 in the driveway and nothing all around the curve. Then you come to the one that abuts their parking lot. That right now and every day, if you go by there, even at this, well, when we come in, their whole driveway is blocked with that apartment building's cars because they can fit 1 car in that driveway that abuts their driveway, their parking lot. So again, these people have to find somewhere if they're going to even allow 1 parking spot on the street, or like they say, if they're going to make them smaller sized, to go in diagonal, it ain't going to work. It just, the car, and again, if you get somebody that owns a truck or owns a Jeep, which is a big thing today, it's not going to fit. They're just not going to fit. But I'm not concerned. I mean, I am concerned with parking, but my biggest issue is the quality of life. To put 19 more units in that small area is just going to create worse havoc than that's there now. And I hope and pray that if they are approved, which I hope they're not, but if they are, that people that are going to rent their units take a look at that neighborhood and take a look at the police department and see the problems of the quality of life that exist just on those 3 streets in that box is ferocious. So, again, I don't feel that the development should be allowed because of the amount of units they want to put in there. I think they need to lower the units, and then it would make everybody happy, even all that surround them. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? Anybody else? Well, Attorney Geary alluded to that now we do have a traffic engineer, which we've been trying to get on board for the last 2 years. And we finally got one, and as a result, we reached out to the traffic engineer and asked if they would please look at this project, due to the fact of all the concerns that have been raised over the periods of time. So we did receive a letter from the traffic engineer. The board members, we received it by way of an email this morning, and I'm going to read it in detail because it addresses some of the comments that were raised here tonight. By the traffic engineer, Elizabeth Altman, I've received the site plan application and have a couple of comments. The on-street parking analysis prepared by the applicant does not consider the posting of resident-only on-street parking spaces. Almost every dwelling on Beaulieu Street, 13 out of 15, and Boulevard Street, 3 out of 5, has a posted resident parking space along with their property frontage, reducing the available public parking supply identified within the report. It does appear that with these spaces removed from the parking supply calculation, that on-street parking spaces are available during the day. The zoning parking requirement is for 38 parking spaces at 2 spaces per unit. Recent parking studies in Massachusetts, urban areas of multi-family dwellings with access to mass transit record peak overnight parking demands of 1.5 spaces per unit or less, including visitor parking. The applicant is currently proposing 29 parking spaces in the main parking field in the latest plan revision, which is a parking supply of 1.5 parking spaces per unit. It is my opinion that the parking provided in the main parking field will adequately accommodate the parking demand on the proposed 19 apartment units. The revised parking provides 25 7.75 times 18-foot angled parking spaces, with an additional 4 at the required 9 times 18-foot width. The reduced parking stall width can be considered for off-street parking areas supporting a residential development as parking turnover is low. The 24-foot aisle width is acceptable for vehicles to enter and exit the parking spaces. The applicant could consider assignment of the 9.18 parking spaces to any resident with larger vehicles. The one-way circulation through the main parking field is desirable and will eliminate circulation of resident vehicles throughout the adjacent neighborhood. The applicant provided a transportation demand management plan. This is known what they call the TDM. The TDM plan should be modified to include the distribution of LRTA schedules to all residents upon moving. And number 5, the 5 proposed Gas Street parking spaces accessed on Beaulieu Street will eliminate 3 public on-street parking spaces that would normally be available to the adjacent neighbors. These spaces are unnecessary to support the proposed development. Please let me know if you have any questions, transportation engineer. So these are the comments that we received as of, well, I got them this morning at 9:15. So those are concerns that a lot of things have been addressed, and this is what we finally got from our city traffic engineer. So I just want to read that in full to everybody. So staying that, at this point, I'm going to turn over to the board members for their comments and concerns.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure, Mr. Fischett?
You know, it was important to get the comments from the transportation traffic engineer. I think that probably the ZBA could have benefited from getting some input as well. Unfortunately, that person wasn't on board at the time. You know, I can tell you, I've been on the board for 16 years, and I know this has been an ongoing project for quite some time. I have never visited and driven around a site more than I have this particular site. And so one of the concerns when I saw the revised plan was the proposed parking on Bolio Street, because right now, I really believe that, and based on the traffic issues that I've dealt with sitting here, and I am not a traffic engineer, but it's reinforced by everything the traffic engineer had stated in her comments, is that the way the parking has been presented in the main parking with the larger units against the building, and I have been down Beauvais Street more times than I care to mention, taking pictures. I even got pictures of Sandy walking the neighborhood. There is some parking available there at all times. I've been there at all times. Bolio Street is a disaster. Bolio Street can't afford to give up one parking space. So I certainly have, as a site plan, and I'm looking at access, egress from a site, I just can't go along with those parking. Believe me, I have self-examined myself on this one, and no self-respecting planner, I can't understand how you would even go along with that. I just don't understand it. I have pictures. I went by yesterday at noontime. There were 3 cars parked right in front of that spot. So I really have a hard time with that. And it's being confirmed by the traffic engineer, the city's traffic engineer, saying, look, you're going to lose valuable spots on the street. The way it's designed, and I know people may not believe it, and we've dealt with a lot of these, they're smaller units. It really is designed to keep the circulation, to keep the traffic, for the most part. I'm not going to tell you there isn't going to be some events where that overflows, but for the most part, it stays within the site. The angled parking, it ensures the one-way going through around Bolio Street. Even in that short space, there's a lot of parking from that area. We've approved smaller units. They don't require as much parking. We've got years of that showing that. And in Massachusetts, statistics even show that. So I understand the conversion of these buildings are difficult. In my neighborhood, we had a nursing home on Varnum Ave in the neighborhood. The neighbors fought it fiercely. But it was converted, and the units were there. You know, the neighbors actually wanted it to revert back. It was single-family zoning. You know, and they felt it should be torn down and there should be 2 single-family homes put there. It's not a practical solution, unfortunately. I think this really does make an effort to contain the traffic from this site and the parking within the site. I'm not going to say there's not going to be spillover, but I think it really does make that effort. And I really think the landscaping we've talked about with the parking, how can anybody say that looks great the way it is? It doesn't. So that's an improvement. So I will say, I am one person. I don't know how the rest of the board members feel, but certainly we have the comments from the traffic engineer if we were defending this. I just can't approve this with the 5 parking spots on Bolio Street. I do like the recommendation of assigning, if there are any larger, people with a larger vehicle that would be exclusive to those parking spots, but the larger spots, I suspect they would gravitate to those anyways. But obviously, that's something to consider. So I think, Mr. Chairman, that's, I've looked at this so many different ways. And I was concerned about the parking on Bolio Street, and I think those parking spots are critical. And now with school open, I've driven down there several times with the school open and the school children out in the schoolyard, and Bovier Street still has capacity there. And I do think most of it's going to be, if not all, will be contained within that site for the most part. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Janae or Kayla, like, any comments?
Can I ask a clarification question from the staff? From what I understand, Jerry doesn't agree with those 5 Grasscrete parking spaces in the rear of the property, doesn't agree with putting them there, but the zoning board approved it based on the number of spaces and granted the relief based on that, I think 34 spaces. And so I'm just curious, if we don't approve the site plan, if we're in agreement about those 5 spaces, does the applicant have to go back to the zoning board to get, for just to say like 29 spaces? Is that what happens?
If they wish. So, but yes, so what would happen is if we approve without those 5 spaces, so say we approve it without the 5 spaces for the special permit and the site plan, then the applicant has approval from the planning board and the ZBA, which conflict each other. So they would either have to ask one of us to reconsider.
Yeah, so if we had to go back to the zoning board, we would be going back to the zoning board asking for a minor modification of the project.
And since we just got the traffic engineer last week before, I know the ZBA would not have had the benefit of the city traffic engineer's comments. And that might be a new reason why they would be given an opportunity to be heard for new circumstances that have arose since your last meeting.
Right. I mean, you know, obviously, we went, if you all recall, we went to the zoning board at the request of this board so that we could make sure we were going to get the relief we were requesting.
Yeah.
We did that. We listened to the zoning board. And again, we listened, we believe we were listening to the neighbors, and the overwhelming concern we heard was get the cars off the street. And so that's, you know, the suggestion of the zoning board members and what we hear from the neighbors, that's what we decided to do, and it was approved. I understand, Mr. Frechette, I understand your position clearly, and certainly the zoning board would have benefited from having those comments, no question about it. And we would have benefited from having those comments, but we didn't have them. So this is what we're stuck with right now.
So independently, we have a right to vote either way, and they would have to ask for modification either before us or the ZBA. Because they couldn't build it because it'd be in conflict of what our regulations say compared to what the ZBA gave them.
And I will stipulate that, you know, Bolio Street is a disaster. I'm not, you know, we
I think you
said that from
day
the
one,
beginning.
Counselor.
So
You've been saying that
we
from
didn't
day
want to
one.
do that, but we were asked to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you've been on record here before us twice saying that Bolio Street is packed.
Right.
I mean, you haven't never said it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
No, let the board finish, I'll come back to you, ma'am, okay? Yeah, no problem, we'll get to you.
Yeah, then my comment would be, I agree with Jerry's assessment, and I feel even more validated that it's the parking, or the new traffic and transportation engineer, that those spots in the back kind of maybe do more harm than good. But I just did want to highlight that the transportation and traffic engineer says that they're unnecessary to support this development. So I think with the 29 spaces as shown, if you subtract those 5 in the rear, I would be in support of this project. And also the fact that just feeling validated about the size, I know the size is smaller, but the traffic engineer confirmed with the one-way and with the residential use that size would be appropriate. So again, it kind of makes a big difference when you have a professional weighing in on behalf of the city. And so that's my kind of general comment. And then I actually have a question. I'm sure that I brought this up in the pre-application meeting, so I just wanted to get clarification from North Point Construction. I'm just curious how you can build these 19 units with no units being accessible. I understand that, you have to go up a set of stairs, I think from both the front and the rear of the property. So I'm just curious how you can build those with none being accessible.
So the code regulations require anything 19 units or less does not need to have any accessible units. If it's 20 units or more, that's when accessibility triggers.
Thank you. I think you answered that months ago, but thank you for reminding me. Those are my only comments and questions. Thank you.
Caleb?
I think to add on to the parking, I want to just explore what Mrs. Kelleher mentioned about the reduced size parking spaces. Have that come out in the ZBA discussion?
Most certainly did come up at the ZBA actually, one of the ZBA members who has an architectural background is the one that suggested the reduction of these sizes. So they knew exactly what they were voting on.
I see. But then there was a consideration about special permit or variance for.
Yeah, and the professional staff didn't bring that up either.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I agree with that assertion.
Maybe if I suppose you need to go back to ZBA, that might be one thing to add.
If that's the case, of course.
Yeah. So I think I'm in agreement with the rest of the board that we now have a transportation engineer, and she definitely have addressed our concern and give us new insight as well. So I think I see this as a progress for the broader project. So I think now what the board need to consider is what to do with that 5 spaces. So, thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. Mr. Malovich, I know you're on Zoom. You have any questions, Bob? Comments?
No, but just my comments would be exactly what the rest of the board has said. That if those 5 spaces can be getting rid of, I'd rather have 3 on the street than 3 into the property in that location. I think the site needs more usable open space. And now we have a new traffic engineer who says that the 29 spaces is adequate at that site because of the type of housing. We're talking about smaller housing units that are typically going to be occupied by young professionals, that would be adequate. 29 spaces would be adequate for that development. And I agree, but go with the will of the board as to what we want to do about the 5 spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Malovich.
So, Mr. Chairman, the applicant would be willing to remove those parking spaces off of Bolio Street and revert that portion of the property back to what we saw in the original site plan that we presented. So we would be providing a revised site plan showing the original design to the rear of the building and the new parking in the main parking area. So a total of 29 parking spaces. We will have to, we're in the position now of having to go back to the zoning board, and we're willing to do that. Ultimately, I think it makes for a better project. As I've said, as we just discussed, Bolio Street is a problem, and we're not looking to add to that, but we did it at the suggestion of the board and what we thought we were hearing from the neighbors. But we understand all the board members' concerns, and we don't necessarily disagree with you. So we're happy to do it.
Okay, thank you. Let me
But we would like some closure tonight. We would like to
Sure,
get
I
some.
understand that. I mean, this has been hanging around for a while. I get it. Yeah, thank you. I mean, a lot of the stuff the engineer said is what you said.
She said what I said, but it's very clear that he required a special permit. And he had to file for that request, and he had to notify the abutters
Well,
before anything could be done with respect to the spaces. But that's not what I want to even speak about. What I want to explain to you is this is my 5th meeting, and I have listened to every single word that was said. And what the developer was actually told by the zoning board after the first meeting, because this is one project, and when this plan goes through, all 6 projects that are St. Louis School are going to be purchased. Once you give the green light on this project, they're going to buy all 6 pieces of property. You have the academy, you have the big grammar school, you have the church, you have the rectory, you have the land to the left of the driveway and the land to the right. So this is just the start of what's going to go on in this neighborhood. And what they were told was because they would be purchasing the entire project, to take the parking off-street parking spaces from the parking lot across the street. They've got a huge parking lot across the street for the church and for the school. And what they were told was to talk to the archdiocese and work a deal with the archdiocese to get those cars off of the street. They were not told to jam more cars in that parking lot. They were told to make it happen across the street, because that's what the code calls for when you are purchasing these buildings that have parking lots across the street. So that you can't overdevelop and jam this neighborhood and then do it again on this building because you have these parking spaces, and this building because you have these parking spaces. This is a way to control the development in that area. Because if you need to give these parking spaces, they're going to lose them for the next building. That's what this is about. Don't be fooled that they're trying to work with anybody in the neighborhood. It's all about the dollar, the bottom line and the dollar, period.
thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Ms. McNamara?
I just have a quick question, why it would have to come back as a minor modification? With it being such a big deal, why would it be a minor modification?
That's up to the board.
Up to you guys.
Sure. I mean, when they come before us, and I know you've been here plenty of times.
Yes.
And if it comes in for minor modification, the board has to decide if it's a minor modification, number one. If it is, then they listen to modification, they will vote for or against. If they vote no, then they have to have a public
And
hearing.
the minor modification is turned down.
Right. So it's up to them whether to go back, whether they think it's a minor modification. But, you know, they have to go back, if Attorney Gary said if they're gonna go back, they're gonna.
I just thought I read the ordinance of minor modification different, that's all.
Well,
That
basically,
it
so the
didn't
board has to
concern
decide.
with
Yeah,
big
they decide what they said.
constructions or, you know, when you're taking a 2 from a 3-family.
Yeah.
That
So
minor
basically, the
modification's
minor modification, they would say is, the plans are all the same, we're just asking that the variance that you gave us, I mean, that included those 5 spaces, in light of what the traffic engineer says, is that we don't want them at this point, because we want to keep it as open space as a result of what we've heard from the traffic engineer.
Correct.
Do you feel it's better, that it's better to have those more, I mean, that those 5 spaces are gone and you have more off-street
Oh,
parking there?
absolutely, absolutely.
Because we all
But-
know that, yeah, that street's a mess.
But again, the point that they had talked, they needed to find something somewhere,
Mhm.
and that's why that was the best place they could get them. But again,
Mhm.
I didn't go and say, pick out these and pick out
Sure.
those.
I understand.
That wasn't me.
Yeah.
But the other question I have, I know we're discussing just parking, but is any point anybody going to talk about the quality of life in that neighborhood? Because of the development being 19 units stuffed into a box.
Right.
I think that deserves a big concern more than anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Any of the board members have any further comments?
I have one comment. So,
Sure, go ahead, Caleb.
remember when we're talking about development with TDMs, oftentimes we might require a study of at least the parking demand, like certain period after occupancy. So I would suggest that might be something that could be a condition as a part of the TDM, like to assess the
I'm
parking
sorry,
needs.
could you repeat that?
So, you know, the traffic demand project,
Yes,
have a follow-up after a period of time to see what's working and how to adjust it.
administrative review?
Yeah.
And I'm sure if, we have the statistics and you're kind of confident, and so that shouldn't be.
We would be amenable to a administrative review after a certain period of time.
Great, thank you. Yep. And I mean, that will, I think, will add another, confirmation to what the neighbors might be concerned about.
Yeah, and again, but we do have the benefit now of two transportation professionals weighing in on parking, and neither one thought there was a parking problem in the neighborhood.
So another confirmation wouldn't hurt.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
and we're willing to do it.
I mean, obviously, this would have been helpful back in April for everybody,
No question about
if we
it.
had it on board. I mean, we've been asking for help and relief for this for 2 years.
Agreed.
And just another point to get back for, on the ZBA, when you read their notices, they'll mention the 4 variances. And the last sentence says, any other relief that they want to give them, they can. We've stricken that off our rules and regulations. We don't put that on our advertisements anymore. I'm sure Mr. Gary's noticed it. I know staff has talked about it. I said, I don't like it. It was addressed from the public before, but the ZBA and different people and planning staff, because of the relief that the ZBA says, they think it's still appropriate. So they put down all the variances and any other relief as requested. I don't like it. Planning board doesn't do it. And I can only speak for the planning board.
The ZBA rendered its decision. There was an appeal period. It wasn't appealed.
When I watched it on TV Live that night, like you said, one of the board members brought the issue up
Right.
to reduce the parking size requirement. It was brought upon them.
They were well aware
They
of what
suggested
they
you
were-
look at it and come back.
They were well aware of what they were
Yeah,
voting on.
I watched the meeting, and one of the members said, reduce the parking and come back, right? The size of the parking.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. They brought it up, you didn't.
That's right.
Yeah. So you did what they requested.
And we did exactly what they requested. And that's why we presented the plan we presented tonight, which,
Because
again,
that's what
was
they asked
not
for.
our first choice.
And if your party didn't go along with it, your party wouldn't have got the relief.
Don't think so.
No.
Because we didn't have the benefit of those comments.
Absolutely. I hear you.
So, again, we're happy to remove those. We think it makes for a better project. Now we have to go back to the zoning board. Whether they determine if it's a minor modification or otherwise, we'll figure that out. We believe it's a minor modification based on my initial discussions anyway. But we'll figure that out.
Yeah, and they'll decide whether it is, and they go forward. If not, then you
right.
have to be publicized and have a public hearing again.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so coming back to the board now, so we have to make a determination on it to vote for a site plan and a subdivision.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the site plan with the following conditions: that the applicant will remove the 5 parking spaces in the rear of the building on Bolio Street, as recommended by the city's transportation engineer, and that the applicant submit a final landscaping plan for DPD approval. And Counselor, just, going down Bolio Street, so I think we have an opportunity here. I was looking at the original landscape, the original plan. If we could design that landscape plan back there, and Peter, just, DPD to focus in on that, but it is a good stretch of Bolio Street, right? There's an opportunity to create a better streetscape there, to soften that a little bit. However we do it, with some trees, it's got to be, I'm not a landscape architect or an expert, but I know there's a better way of softening that. So we've got the building, I think even like from a walkable perspective, I'd be, matter of fact, a nice area to walk by, because right now it's just an awful chain link fence and a brick building.
Yeah.
And pavement in between. Somebody thinks that's great, you gotta convince me otherwise.
We have a landscape designer on board, so we will
Okay.
certainly work.
All right, so you get what I'm saying, right? So when you're walking on the street, you get a better feel on the back of that building. Again, finalize the landscaping plan for the entire site, but I really want that to be, we've talked about that as far as also surrounding the parking area, the landscaped in a way, I think it was suggested that people would be driving over the curb. I argue that won't be the case, but obviously in designing the landscape to buffer that as much as possible from the road. But obviously, we're interested in the aesthetics as well, softening that look. The applicant shall incorporate in the TDM plan the distribution of LRT schedules to all residents upon move-in. After 6 months of full occupancy, an administrative review of the TDM plan and the effectiveness of the parking layout shall be evaluated with any suggested mitigation as a result. And I believe the other comments were more engineering that you'll have to comply with. Unless anybody thinks of anything, I think that would cover conditions that I would have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for approval of the site plan. We need a second.
I'll second.
Second by Caleb. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. Any opposition?
Aye.
Hearing none. The motion carries for the site plan. Now we need a motion for the special permit.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion to approve the special permit incorporating the conditions that were set forth in the site plan and also incorporating the conditions that were set forth in the ZBA, and the applicant will have to go back, but they are landscape related, and it says the applicant shall plant a shade trees which provide a minimum of 20-foot canopy at mature growth. The applicant should work with DPW to meet the parking area screening requirements and parking area landscape requirements, pretty much what we've said, but just to kind of add the 20-foot canopy on the, as noted in the ZBA approval.
So we have a motion made for the special permit.
Second.
We have the second.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Any opposition? Hearing none, the special permit carries. Good luck and thank you, everybody, for coming down.
Thank you, and thank you all for your
Appreciate it very
time.
much. Thank you very much. Any comments from any board members? Any board members have any comments at all?
I just have one comment. The Community Preservation Committee, the Community Preservation Act funding applications are due September 15th. So at our last meeting in August, they reviewed the eligibility forms, and we're in the next phase of reviewing of accepting applications. So I just wanted to make that public.
First time around, huh?
Yeah, but we also had more funding the first time around, because I think it was over 3 to 4 years for the first time. So this will only be 1 year of funding, really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You had some real exciting projects last time.
Really exciting projects, yeah. It was really, I think,
I was almost envious. I would have liked to
It
have
was-
served on that.
yeah, it was hard to say no, and I
Holy
think
Farm was right in your ballpark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no.
we did a lot of good funding, I think, last year, so I'm excited to see what comes through this year.
So how much is the funding for this year?
The funding each year is around $1 million. I think it's just under, and it fluctuates a little bit, but it's usually around $1 million. But our first year, we had just over $3 million because it had been compiling over a few years before we had the plan in place.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to have one announcement is, as we all know, that our Deputy Director of Planning and Development, our Assistant City Manager, Christine McCall, has left the city of Lowell to go work for a private company. I know she's been here many nights with us late into the evening, and we want to wish her her best. She was very diligent and following up on any questions we ever had, any projects we had. She was a very hard worker, and on behalf of the planning board, I wish her the very best and good luck in her new endeavors. Saying that, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made.
Seconded.
Second. By Danae, and all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye.